There is one sentence, just one, and when you finally speak it, when you truly believe every word, when it rises from a place so deep inside that it no longer sounds like a question, a request, or an attempt to fix things, everything begins to change. Not because the sentence is magical, not because those words hold some secret power. It changes everything because the person saying it has become someone the manipulative person in their life never expected to face. Someone they never planned for. Someone they spent years trying to slowly break apart, one piece at a time, one layer after another, one part of their identity after the next. And they failed. That sentence is coming. But before you reach it, you need to understand something that perhaps no one has ever explained clearly enough, honestly enough, or with the respect your experience truly deserves. What happened to you was never just a difficult relationship. It was never simply poor communication. It was not just a personality difference, a rough season, or two people who were never meant to be together. What happened was a slow, steady, and often unconscious erosion of your sense of self by someone who believed they had to weaken you in order to feel complete themselves. If those words made your chest tighten, if something inside you quietly whispered, "That's exactly what happened," then stay with me because what comes next may completely change the way you see everything. This message was meant for people who have lived through that silent battle and never had the right words to describe it. Now let's look at what a manipulative person truly fears, because this is where many people misunderstand the situation. Most believe they fear being exposed. They think that if enough people hear the story, if enough evidence is collected, or if the truth is finally spoken in front of the right audience, everything will fall apart for them. Others believe they fear anger. They imagine that if they finally stop staying quiet, raise their voice, and fight back with the same intensity they have endured for years, the other person will finally retreat. Then there are those who have stayed in these relationships for so long that they hardly recognize themselves anymore. They often believe the manipulative person fears losing them. They have been conditioned to measure their worth by how desperately the other person keeps trying to pull them back. But the deeper truth is something very different. Here is what quietly disturbs someone who depends on control. Here is what causes them to create conflict just when everything seems peaceful. Here is the one thing they cannot control, reshape, twist, or explain away. What they fear most is someone who no longer depends on them to decide what is real. Someone who no longer waits for their approval before trusting their own thoughts. Someone who has rebuilt an inner identity so steady, so grounded, and so resistant to manipulation that no amount of charm, anger, guilt, or confusion can move them from their path. Stay with me, because very few people ever recognize this until it changes their entire life. What they fear most is someone who is truly finished. Not angry finished, not wounded finished. Not the kind of finish that threatens to leave, but always comes back hoping things will be different. They fear the quiet kind of ending, the kind where a door closes without drama because there is nothing left to explain. The kind where silence is no longer empty but full of strength. It becomes the presence of someone who has finally chosen themselves completely, leaving no emotional space for control, guilt, or manipulation to survive. To understand why that person becomes so unsettling, you first need to understand what this pattern of behavior really is. And no, it is not always the exaggerated image many people imagine. It is not always the loud, boastful individual who constantly demands attention and fills every room with their own importance. Some certainly behave that way. Many do not. Many appear calm. Many seem charming, thoughtful, generous at times, and incredibly skilled at making you feel like the most important person in the world until, suddenly, you are not. Many carefully present themselves as the victim in every situation. They become the misunderstood person who simply needs someone to finally love them the right way. They often look exactly like the person you trusted, the person you believed in, the person you built your dreams around. Most people never see the pattern until they are already caught inside it. So, what connects all of these different personalities? What makes this pattern recognizable once you finally know what to watch for? At its deepest level, it is the inability to fully accept another person's humanity. They struggle to see other people as complete individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, boundaries, and independent identity. Instead, relationships slowly become centered around control, validation, and emotional dependence. Other people are valued mostly for the role they play rather than for who they truly are. When someone begins thinking independently, setting healthy boundaries, or refusing to participate in emotional games, that loss of control feels deeply threatening. That is why genuine confidence becomes so powerful. It cannot be manipulated easily because it no longer depends on someone else's approval to survive. Real freedom begins the moment you trust your own experience more than someone else's version of reality. From that moment forward, your decisions stop being driven by fear and start being guided by clarity. That is the point where manipulation loses its power, not because the other person suddenly changes, but because you do. And once that inner change becomes real, lasting, and unshakable, everything else begins to change with it. At the heart of it all is one painful truth. They could not fully see you as a complete, independent human being. A person with your own thoughts, emotions, needs, and boundaries that deserved respect simply because they belong to you. Instead, your value is often measured by how well you supported their emotional needs or protected their sense of control. You were not treated as someone to truly understand. You became a role to fulfill, and when you stopped filling that role in the way they expected, they did not simply mourn the change. They often responded with blame, distance, criticism, or punishment. If part of you is resisting these words because you still remember the person you loved, ask yourself a few honest questions. When did they celebrate your success without somehow turning the attention back to themselves? When did they quietly sit beside your pain without making their own story the center of the conversation? When did they hear one of your boundaries and respect it simply because it mattered to you, even if they did not agree with it? These questions are not meant to hurt you. They are meant to help you see more clearly, and clarity is never cruelty. Clarity is often the first real step toward getting your life back. Stay with me, because understanding this changes everything. Patterns of emotional control are rarely built overnight. They usually begin with reflection. Early in the relationship, the other person often appears to become exactly who you have been hoping to find. They seem to share your values, enjoy the same interests, and understand your deepest emotional wounds in ways that almost feel impossible to explain. Sometimes this is intentional. Sometimes it is not. In many cases, they truly believe they are the version of themselves they are presenting in those first months. The painful reality is that much of what you fell in love with was actually a reflection of your own hopes, dreams, and emotional needs. As time passes and that carefully created image begins to crack, something very understandable starts happening inside your mind. You hold tightly to the first version you experienced. You tell yourself that is the real person. The cold behavior, the emotional distance, the criticism, the confusion, and the constant questioning of your own memories must simply be caused by stress, fear, old wounds, or perhaps something you did wrong. Slowly, an invisible conflict begins inside you. It becomes a battle between what you actually experience and what you are repeatedly told happened. Between what your emotions are telling you and what you are encouraged to believe you should feel. Between the person you once were and the version of yourself that is gradually being reshaped. This inner conflict becomes exhausting because your own reality starts feeling uncertain. Instead of trusting yourself, you begin searching for explanations that make everything fit together. This is why emotional confusion becomes such a powerful form of control. It does not require physical force. It works by creating uncertainty. Warmth is followed by withdrawal. Kindness is followed by criticism. Moments of connection are interrupted by unexpected cruelty. Your nervous system begins chasing consistency instead of experiencing it. Rather than relaxing into the relationship, your mind works harder every single day. It studies every conversation. It analyzes every expression. It changes your behavior again and again, hoping to rediscover the person you met in the beginning. Most people never realize that this endless search keeps them emotionally trapped long after the relationship itself has stopped feeling safe. The difficult truth is that the version you keep chasing was never fully real. It was an image carefully shaped to draw you closer. You have spent years trying to return to a version of the relationship that could never truly exist because it was never built on genuine emotional stability. Many people have heard the term gaslighting, but few understand how deeply it can affect a person's life. The greatest damage often comes not from one single lie, but from the slow erosion of your confidence in your own reality. Over time, you begin hearing that your perceptions are wrong, your emotions are excessive, your needs are unreasonable, your memories cannot be trusted, your instincts are simply paranoia, your boundaries are attacks, your sadness becomes manipulation, and your anger is labeled as instability. Little by little, you stop asking yourself what you honestly think or feel. Instead, your focus shifts toward wondering what the other person believes, what they will approve of, what they will tolerate, and how you can avoid upsetting them. If this feels familiar, hear this carefully. You did not suddenly lose your mind. You did not become weak. You were slowly taught to distrust the very inner voice that was designed to protect you. If you have ever stood in your own life feeling like a stranger to yourself, uncertain about what is real and what was placed inside your mind by someone else's influence, remember this. That confusion is not your identity. It is the result of what you experienced. And those two things are not the same. The next insight may completely change the way you understand your own healing. There is another important idea that many people misunderstand. It is the powerful connection created through repeated cycles of emotional pain and temporary relief. This process is deeply rooted in the way the human brain responds to inconsistent rewards. It develops through repeated patterns of hurt followed by comfort, rejection followed by affection, fear followed by reassurance. These emotional cycles can create an attachment that sometimes feels even stronger than the steady connection built through healthy love. This does not happen because someone is weak, foolish, or lacking confidence. It happens because the brain naturally responds to unpredictable rewards in very specific ways. The emotional bond becomes real, the chemistry becomes real, the love you felt was real, even if the other person was never able to receive it or return it in a healthy way. This truth matters because so many survivors spend years blaming themselves. They wonder why they stayed, why they returned, or why they defended someone who continued hurting them. The answer is not that something was broken inside you. The answer is that your nervous system adapted to a powerful emotional pattern. Understanding this is not about making excuses. It is about creating a solid foundation for healing. It becomes the first strong brick in the wall you begin building between yourself and everything that once tried to erase your identity. Eventually, after enough reflection, enough quiet nights, enough painful honesty, and enough moments of finally seeing the truth without denying it, something changes inside. That moment arrives differently for everyone. But when it comes, you stop trying to fix the other person. You stop exhausting yourself trying to be understood by someone unwilling to understand. You stop waiting for the apology, the acknowledgement, or the genuine remorse you deserved but may never receive. And that is often the moment your life quietly begins to belong to you again. There comes a moment when you stop waiting for someone else to confirm what you already know. You stop asking them to tell you what is real, and you begin trusting your own experience again. The moment that happens, something changes in a way they cannot ignore and cannot control. Emotional control depends on a very specific source of energy. It feeds on your reactions, your hope, your fear, your anger, your love, and your constant desire to finally make everything right. As long as you keep reacting, even through tears, frustration, arguments, or endless explanations, they continue receiving exactly what they need. Your reaction becomes proof that they still occupy space in your mind and emotions. That emotional importance is what keeps the cycle alive. It is why they continue provoking, creating conflict, and returning after you have tried to move on. They are not necessarily returning because of love. They return because your emotional response tells them they still have influence. But something remarkable happens when you truly stop responding from that place. Not pretending, not using silence as a strategy. Genuinely reaching a place where you no longer need anything from them emotionally. Suddenly, the entire pattern stops working. You cannot manipulate someone who no longer seeks validation from you. You cannot control someone who is no longer afraid of losing you. Stay with me, because this is where everything begins to change. Most people never realize that real freedom begins quietly, long before anyone else notices it. The truth is that the appearance of power is often very different from genuine strength. The cruelty, manipulation, control, arrogance, and emotional games may look powerful from the outside, but they are often built on fear rather than confidence. They become ways of protecting a fragile identity that was formed long ago to hide deep feelings of shame, insecurity, or unworthiness. Understanding this does not excuse harmful behavior, and it certainly does not erase the pain you experienced. It simply explains that the person who hurt you was not acting from inner strength. They were acting from fear. The anger often came from fear. The criticism came from fear. The charm came from fear. Even the silence was rooted in fear. Every tactic served one purpose, avoiding the parts of themselves they could not bear to face. Meanwhile, you entered the relationship with qualities that made you deeply capable of love. You brought empathy, compassion, emotional awareness, and the willingness to truly understand another person. You offered acceptance, patience, and genuine care. You gave them the opportunity to be loved as a complete human being, imperfections included. But they could not fully receive what you offered. Not because you failed, not because you were lacking, not because your love was not enough. They simply were not able to accept something that required emotional honesty they had never learned to live with. That realization changes everything because it finally allows you to stop measuring yourself through someone else's distorted view. The next insight may completely change how you see your own healing. Once you truly understand this, something inside begins to settle. You stop asking yourself what you could have done differently. You stop replaying every conversation searching for the perfect answer. You stop carrying responsibility for wounds that were never yours to heal. Little by little, you begin gathering the scattered pieces of your identity. The parts that were questioned, dismissed, or made to feel small slowly return to you. Every piece you recover becomes proof that your true self survived despite everything you experienced. That is why real healing is not built through revenge, dramatic confrontations, or carefully planned final conversations. It grows through understanding. It grows through truth. It grows through the slow and sometimes painful process of seeing both yourself and your past with complete clarity. Only from that place can the most powerful sentence finally emerge. If those words come from anger, they lose their strength. If they come from pain, they still carry emotional dependence. If they come from strategy, they remain part of the same unhealthy game. Their true power appears only when they come from quiet certainty. The sentence is simple. I no longer need anything from you. Whether you say those exact words or express the same truth differently does not matter. What matters is the meaning behind them. They are spoken without rage, without hope, without sadness, without the desire to prove anything. They come from complete inner peace. Not I hate you, because hate still creates attachment. Not I'm finished with you, because that can still sound like a battle. Not even I forgive you, because genuine forgiveness does not require an audience. It happens inside you for your own freedom. When those words become completely true, something changes that cannot be reversed. The other person recognizes, perhaps for the first time, that they have become emotionally irrelevant, not rejected in a way that can be twisted into another story, not abandoned in a way they can use to regain control, simply unnecessary. You have become someone they cannot manipulate because there is no open wound left for them to touch, no desperate hope left for them to promise, no fear left for them to awaken whenever they choose. Instead, you have become someone who sees the full picture, understands what happened, and quietly walks forward with confidence instead of bitterness. That confidence is not loud. It does not seek revenge or validation. It simply comes from finally knowing your own worth without needing another person to confirm it. Those who truly heal after emotional manipulation are not colder people. They do not become hardened or emotionally distant. They become wiser. They learn to recognize the difference between love that nourishes and love that slowly drains them. They understand the difference between someone who only reflects what they want to hear and someone who genuinely sees them for who they are. They carry a quiet steadiness that comes from surviving deep pain without losing themselves. You were never defined by what happened to you. You were chosen because of your empathy, your loyalty, your depth, and your ability to love wholeheartedly. Those qualities were never weaknesses. They were always rare strengths. No one can truly steal them. They may try to dim your light, but they cannot erase what has always belonged to you. And once you finally see that truth for yourself, no one else has the power to convince you otherwise ever again.